Good afternoon, beautiful people from planet Earth and all other interdimensional entities of love, light, truth, honour, integrity, maybe even holiness and righteousness too. Let's ask for it all while we're at it. Here at Sacred Space, Titania's realm. As you can see, since my earlier video, a couple of hours ago, brushed my hair, put on lipstick and a pair of earrings, my little rhinoceros earrings I made from African beads that were market stock of my mother's. They're not sitting right, are they? By the gods. Why aren't you sitting right? Well, anyway, I'll have to faff about with that later, find out what's gone wrong here. Anyway, we won't worry about too much about it. It's only for my YouTube audience, and they don't care if I'm wearing earrings or not, because most of the time they're just listening to my sexy voice, not even looking what I look like, which is probably a good thing. Save your eyes, your eyes, your eyes. I do scrub up okay when I put on full regalia and makeup. I missed that. I haven't been dancing. This is the 4th weekend now. And I actually, the part I miss most is scrubbing up with my full regalia and my top hat and my makeup and my corsets and just feeling, glamorous and a bit wonderful, quite frankly. Oh. But anyway, I've been busy. I've been busy doing other things. There is a season and a time for a reason in the season, a seasonable shift. And it's been cold, so it's better for me to stay home and guard my lungs, which have been quite good this year considering how cold it's been. So far so good. Been very blessed. I'm eating very fattening but very delicious quadratini. So if you see me reaching over for my naughtiness, that's my naughtiness today. And I brought my boys back inside. Kermie's up on top of his cage. Is he? No. He's eating. He's eating. Where is he? I don't see him. I thought there was a shadow up there. Oh, the shadow that I thought was Kermie was the gallon bottle that holds my distilled water. And Kermie's actually here, behind me. He's behind you. Anyway, it's 4:22 p.m. and we've had a lovely day. It was warm today. It's currently 22 degrees, but it was, my iPhone says it's only 20, so they can argue between themselves, can't they? I don't really care. But it was warm enough that we sat out for quite a few hours in the garden, the boys and I, and the rainbow lorikeets came, didn't they, little boy? And everything was quite wonderful. And the turkey's out there eating what's left of the food that I put out for the lorikeets, because I call him the bastard buzzard, BB for short, because he really is a bit of a bastard, takes all their food and bullies them, and, when it's springtime he builds a mound for his babies and scratches up all the mulch. But I'm actually looking forward to that, because then he'll clean up my yard, scratches everything up, puts it in one big mound, and I don't have the dog or the cats now, so I don't have to worry about his little babies being picked off one by one, which was very traumatising every spring. So Sacred Space is now a bastard buzzard's paradise, where they get to do what they want, whatever, without consequences and without losing any of their little offspring, which is good, because that was awful. But anyway, I did try this. I saved one or two of them I saved, put them back in the forest. But that could be one of the babies actually that I saved. Hangs around like a bloody pet now. I'll never get rid of it now, especially now I'm feeding them. But it's just been so cold, and I had the extra food there. It wasn't going to, it was just going to go off, so it's best to share it. Share your abundance. people of Earth. Share your abundance and your prosperity with the silent ones, those who can't speak or advocate for themselves because they don't have the opposable thumbs and the language. Always look after the innocent and the sweet and the silenced ones. Literally the silenced ones. Got to look after us. Otherwise, when we go to war, it's not pretty people there. Those of us who were silenced for too long. So, enough of that darkness. Eyes stretching his wings and flapping. Good evening, BB. Go back to the forest now. Go and eat wild things or things you're supposed to eat. You spoilt little feathery schnorrer. He's a feathery schnorrer. It's alright, Mama too had to schnorrer in the day. It was degrading, but when you're poor and you've got no way of making an income and you've been robbed by your own state, you've got no choice other than to schnorrer. Schnorrer is Yiddish for begging. Begging and putting a little hand out and help a sister out, am I right? It's awful. So I still live like that sometimes. It's awful, but what can you do? Ironically, today's title that I'm about to read, I haven't even, previewed it or perused it prematurely, is The Force of Circumstances. I wonder if it's about schnorring though. Could be any kind of circumstances. So let us begin with the story. It's time to knuckle down to the reality, the wonderful, magical world that is W. Somerset Maugham. Keep warm, Mr. Maugham. He's probably rolling over in his grave right now. Me reading his stories and not being able to pronounce some of the things that he writes about. Oh well. But here we go. She was sitting on the veranda waiting for her husband to come in for luncheon. The Malay boy had drawn the blinds when the morning lost its freshness, but she had partly raised one of them so that she could look at the river. Under the breathless sun of midday, it had the white pallor of death. A native was paddling along in a dugout so small that it hardly showed above the surface of the water. The colours of the day were ashy and wan. They were but the various tones of the heat. It was like an Eastern melody in the minor key, which exacerbates the nerves by its ambiguous monotony, and the ear awaits impatiently a resolution that waits in vain. The cicadas sang their grating song with a frenzied energy. It was as continual and monotonous as the rustling of a brook over the stones, but on a sudden it was drowned by the loud singing of a bird, mellifluous and rich. And for an instant, with a catch at her heart, she thought of the English blackbird. Then she heard her husband's step on the gravel path behind the bungalow, the path that led to the courthouse in which she had been working, and she rose from her chair to greet him. He writes a lot about courthouses in Malaysia, doesn't he? Must have lived there and worked at that at some time in his life. He's writing from his own experiences, perhaps, or memory, or truth, which is what you should always write about. Truth. Painful though it may be. He ran up the short flight of steps, for the bungalow was built on piles, and at the door the boy was waiting to take his topi. He came into the room which served them as a dining room and a parlour, and his eyes lit up with pleasure as he saw her. Oh, that's real love, isn't it? When someone's face lights up when they see you. I missed that. It was sweet while it lasted. Oh, never mind. Hello, Doris. Hungry? Ravenous. Wonder what I'll have for dinner tonight. Let me think. It'll only take me a minute to have a bath and then I'm ready. Be quick, she smiled. Well, they are married. I would have seen it as a bit of an invitation for me, but then I've only been single for 30 years, you understand? Anyway, you have to laugh. I like my men clean and clear, just saying. He disappeared into his dressing room, and she heard him whistling cheerily while, with the carelessness with which she was always remonstrating, he tore off his clothes and flung them on the floor. He was 29, but he was still a schoolboy. He would never grow up. That was why she had fallen in love with him, perhaps, for no amount of affection could persuade her that he was good-looking. He was a little round man with a red face like the full moon and blue eyes. He was rather pimply. She had examined him carefully and had been forced to confess to him that he had not a single feature that she could praise. She had told him often that he wasn't her type at all. I never said I was a beauty, he laughed. I can't think what it is. I see in you. But of course she knew perfectly well. He was a gay, jolly little man who took nothing very solemnly, and he was constantly laughing. That's how my husband tricked me into marrying him, ugly as he was, sin ugly and soul ugly as he was, pretended to be a cheerful, jolly fellow. We signed the wedding certificate, the ketubah, the Jewish wedding certificate. Immediately he turned into a sullen, malcontent, awful creature. I didn't even recognise who it was I was married to. It was beyond awful. I mean, we all have bad moods. We all have times when we're grieving. He was grieving, to be fair, his father. But he used it as an excuse and he kept it up for the rest of the marriage. Awful, awful, awful. There's nothing worse than a man who fakes his personality and fakes love for you. It's the worst evil in the world. I've been through it before, it's why I'm not doing it again. Fuck off. Anyway, I got triggered, you see, because been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And the 30 years of therapy, I might add. He found life an amusing rather than a serious business. And he had a charming smile. My ex-husband had a lovely smile, beautiful white teeth. His eyes used to sparkle when he smiled, till he signed the wedding certificate, you understand. Talk about an alter ego. Didn't know what. I'd never met that thing before. I'd known him for 18 months when we got married. I guess it wasn't long enough. You need to know someone a long time before you marry them, so you don't get caught out with any surprises with their weird mood swings and their weird depressions and their weird excuses for just being shitty human beings. What can I say, people? Nothing more needs to be said. Right. When she was with him, she felt happy and good-tempered, and the deep affection which she saw in those merry blue eyes of his touched her. It was very satisfactory to be loved like that. Once, sitting on his knees during their honeymoon, she had taken his face in her hands and said to him, "You're an ugly little fat man, Guy, but you've got charm. I can't help loving you." Okay. A wave of emotion swept over her and her eyes filled with tears. She saw his face contorted for a moment with the extremity of his feeling, and his voice was a little shaky when he answered, "It's a terrible thing for me to have married a woman who's mentally deficient," he said. Touché. She chuckled. It was the characteristic answer which she would have liked him to make. It was hard to realise that 9 months ago she had never even heard of him. She had met him at a small place by the seaside where she was spending a month's holiday with her mother. Doris was a secretary to the Member of Parliament. Guy was home on leave. They were staying at the same hotel, and he had quickly told her all about himself. "You're going snooties already, little boy? Oh my goodness. You had a lovely time in the garden, didn't you? You're a happy boy. What about you, little Kermie?" They were very contented, those beauties. Sorry about the interruption there, I just felt the urge to check on my boys. He was born in Sambulu, where his father had served for 30 years under the second Sultan, and on leaving school he had entered the same service. He was devoted to the country. "After all, England's a foreign land to me," he told her. "My home's Sambulu." And now it was her home too. He asked her to marry him at the end of the month's holiday. She had known he was going to, and had decided to refuse him. She was her widowed mother's only child, and she could not go so far away from her. But when the moment came, she did not quite know what happened to her. She was carried off her feet by an unexpected emotion, and she accepted him. They had been settled now for 4 months in the little outstation of which he was in charge. She was very happy. She told him once that she had quite made up her mind to refuse him. "Are you sorry you didn't?" he asked, with a merry smile in his twinkling blue eyes. "I should have been a perfect fool if I had. What a bit of luck that fate or chance or whatever it was stepped in and took the matter entirely out of my hands." Now she heard Guy clatter down the steps to the bathhouse. He was a noisy fellow, and even with bare feet he could not be quiet. But he uttered an exclamation. He said 2 or 3 words in the local dialect, and she could not understand. Then she heard someone speaking to him, not aloud, but in a sibilant whisper. Really, it was too bad of people to waylay him when he was going to have his bath. He spoke again, and though his voice was low, she could hear that he was vexed. I just want to see how long this story is, how long this video is going to be. Didn't think to check that before we started. Rightio. About 2 hours, possibly 3. Oh, in for a penny, in for a pound. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy my weirdness and my story reading and my occasional telling of my own personal stories. It's a bit odd, I know. Just participate in life, people of Earth. It doesn't cost you anything. Right. The other voice was raised now. It was a woman's. Doris supposed it was someone who had a complaint to make. It was like a Malay woman to come in that surreptitious way, but she was evidently getting very little from Guy, for she heard him say, "Get out." That, at all events, she understood, and then she heard him bolt the door. There was a sound of the water he was throwing over himself. The bathing arrangements still amused her. The bathhouses were under the bedrooms, on the ground. You had a large tub of water, and you sluiced yourself with the little tin pail, and in a couple of minutes he was back again in the dining room. His hair was still wet. They sat down to luncheon. "I'm lucky I'm not a suspicious or a jealous person," she laughed. "I don't know that I should altogether approve of your having animated conversations with ladies while you're having your bath." His face, usually so cheerful, had borne a sullen look when he came in, but now it brightened. I wasn't exactly pleased to see her. So I judged by the tone of your voice. In fact, I thought you were rather short with the young person. Damned cheek, waylaying me like that. What did she want? Oh, I don't know. It's a woman from the Kampong. She's had a row with her husband or something. I wonder if it's the same one who was hanging about this morning. He frowned a little. Was there someone hanging about? Yes. I went into your dressing room to see that everything was nice and tidy, and then I went down to the bathhouse. I saw someone slink out of the door as I went down the steps, and when I looked out, I saw a woman standing there. Did you speak to her? I asked her what she wanted, and she said something, but I couldn't understand. I'm not going to have all sorts of stray people prowling about here, he said. They've got no right to come. He smiled, but Doris, with the quick perception of a woman in love, noticed that he smiled only with his lips, not as usual with his eyes also, and wondered what it was that troubled her. What have you been doing this morning? He asked. Oh, nothing much. I went for a little walk. Through the kampong? Yes. I saw a man send a chained monkey up a tree to pick coconuts, which rather thrilled me. It's rather a lark, isn't it? Oh, Guy, there were two little boys watching him, who were much whiter than the others. I wondered if they were half-castes. I spoke to them, but they didn't know a word of English. There are 2 or 3 half-caste children in the kampong, he answered. Who do they belong to? Their mother is one of the village girls. Who is their father? Oh, my dear, that's the sort of question we think it a little dangerous to ask out here. He paused. A lot of fellows have native wives, and then when they go home or marry, they pension them off and send them back to their village. Doris was silent. The indifference with which he spoke seemed a little callous to her. There was almost a frown on her frank, open, pretty English face when she replied, But what about the children? I have no doubt they're properly provided for within his means. A man generally sees that there's enough money to have them decently educated. They get jobs as clerks in a government office, you know. They're all right. So I just had that memory of working in a government office at the police academy. Wasn't all right completely, you understand? But anyway, you've seen earlier videos about that. So I just got the giggles. She gave him a slightly rueful smile. You can't expect me to think it's a very good system. You mustn't be too hard, he smiled back. I'm not hard, but I'm thankful you never had a Malay wife. I should have hated it. Just think if those 2 little brats were yours. The boy changed their plates. There was never much variety in their menu. They started luncheon with river fish, dull and insipid, so that a good deal of tomato ketchup was needed to make it palatable. Then went on to some kind of stew. Guy poured I can never say that word, Worcester sauce over it. The old Sultan didn't think it was a white woman's country, he said presently. He rather encouraged people to keep house with native girls. Of course, things have changed now. The country's perfectly quiet, and I suppose we know better how to cope with the climate. But Guy, the eldest of those boys, wasn't more than 7 or 8, and the other was about 5. It's awfully lonely on an outstation. Why, often one doesn't see another white man for 6 months on end. A fellow comes out here when he's only a boy. He gave her that charming smile of his which transfigured his round, plain face. There are excuses, you know. She always found that smile irresistible. It was his best argument. Her eyes grew once more soft and tender. I'm sure there are. She stretched her hand across the little table and put it on his. I'm very lucky to have caught you so young. Honestly, it would upset me dreadfully if I were told that you had lived like that. He took her hand and pressed it. Are you happy here, darling? Desperately. She looked very cool and fresh in her linen frock. The heat did not distress her. She had no more than the prettiness of youth, though her brown eyes were fine, but she had a pleasing frankness of expression, and her dark short hair was neat and glossy. She gave you the impression of a girl of spirit, and you felt sure that the Member of Parliament for whom she worked had in her a very competent secretary. I loved the country at once, she said. Although I'm alone so much, I don't think I've ever once felt lonely. Of course, she had read novels about the Malay archipelago, and she had formed an impression of a sombre land with great ominous rivers and a silent, impenetrable jungle. When a little coasting steamer set them down at the mouth of the river, where a large boat manned by a dozen Dyaks was waiting to take them to the station, her breath was taken away by the beauty, friendly rather than awe-inspiring, of the scene. It had a gaiety, like the joyful singing of birds in the trees, which she had never expected. On each bank of the river were mangroves and nipa palms, and behind them the dense green of the forest. In the distance stretched blue mountains, range upon range, as far as the eye could see. She had no sense of confinement, nor of gloom, but rather of openness and wide expanses where the exultant fancy could wander with delight. The green glittered in the sunshine, and the sky was blithe and cheerful. The gracious land seemed to offer her a smiling welcome. They rode on, hugging a bank, and high overhead flew a pair of doves. A flash of colour, like a living jewel, dashed across their path. It was a kingfisher. Two monkeys, with their dangling tails, sat side by side on a branch. On the horizon, over there on the other side of the broad and turbid water, beyond the jungle, was a row of little white clouds, the only clouds in the sky, and they looked like a row of ballet girls, dressed in white, waiting at the back of the stage, alert and merry for the curtain to go up. Hello, Kermit. What are you doing? He's a pretty boy. He's a pretty boy. Her heart was filled with joy, and now, remembering it all, her eyes rested on her husband with a grateful, assured affection. And what fun it had been to arrange their living room. It was very big. On the floor, when she arrived, was torn and dirty matting. On the walls of unpainted wood hung, much too high, photogravures of academy pictures, Dyak shields and parangs. The tables were covered with Dyak cloth in sombre colours, and on them stood pieces of Brunei brassware, much in need of cleaning, empty cigarette tins, and bits of Malay silver. There was a rough wooden shelf with cheap editions of novels, and a number of old travel books in battered leather, and another shelf was crowded with empty bottles. It was a bachelor's room, untidy but stiff, and though it amused her, she found it intolerably pathetic. It was a dreary, comfortless life that Guy had led there, and she threw her arms round his neck and kissed him. "You poor darling," she laughed. She had deft hands and she soon made the room habitable. She arranged this and that, and what she could not do with, she turned out. Her wedding presents helped. Now the room was friendly and comfortable. In glass vases were lovely orchids, and in great bowls huge masses of flowering shrubs. She felt an inordinate pride because it was her house. She had never in her life lived in anything but a poky flat, and she had made it charming for him. "Are you pleased with me?" she asked when she had finished. "Quite," he smiled. The deliberate understatement was much to her mind. How jolly it was that they should understand each other so well. They were both of them shy of displaying emotion, and it was only at rare moments that they used with one another anything but ironic banter. They finished luncheon, and he threw himself into a long chair to have a sleep. She went towards her room. She was a little surprised that he drew her to him as she passed, and, making her bend down, kissed her lips. They were not in the habit of exchanging embraces at odd hours of the day. "A full tummy is making you sentimental, my poor lamb," she chaffed him. "Get out, and don't let me see you again for at least 2 hours. Don't snore." She left him. They had risen at dawn, and in 5 minutes were fast asleep. Doris was awakened by the sound of her husband splashing in the bathhouse. The walls of the bungalow were like a sounding board, and not a thing that one of them did escaped the other. She felt too lazy to move, but she heard the boy bring the tea things in, so she jumped up and ran down into her own bathhouse. The water, not cold but cool, was deliciously refreshing. When she came into the sitting room, Guy was taking the rackets out of the press, for they played tennis in the short cool of the evening. The night fell at 6. The tennis court was 200 or 300 yards from the bungalow, and, after tea, anxious not to lose time, they strolled down to it. "Oh, look," said Doris. "There's that girl that I saw this morning." Guy turned quickly. His eyes rested for a moment on a native woman, but he did not speak. "What a pretty sarong she's got," said Doris. "I wonder where it comes from." They passed her. She was slight and small, with the large, dark, starry eyes of her race, and a mass of raven hair. She did not stir as they went by, but stared at them strangely. Doris saw then that she was not quite so young as she had at first thought. Her features were a trifle heavy and her skin was dark, but she was very pretty. She held a small child in her arms. Doris smiled a little as she saw it, but no answering smile moved the woman's lips. Her face remained impassive. She did not look at Guy. She looked only at Doris, and he walked on as though he did not see her. Doris turned to him. "Isn't that baby a duck?" "I didn't notice." She was puzzled by the look of his face. It was deathly white, and the pimples, which not a little distressed her, were more than commonly red. "Did you notice her hands and feet? She might be a duchess." "All natives have good hands and feet," he answered, but not jovially as was his wont. It was as though he forced himself to speak. But Doris was intrigued. "Who is she, do you know?" "She's one of the girls in the campong." They had reached the court now. When Guy went up to the net to see that it was taut, he looked back. The girl was still standing where they had passed her. Their eyes met. "Shall I serve?" said Doris. "Yes, you've got the balls on your side." He played very badly. Generally he gave her 15 and bet her, but today she won easily. And he played silently. Generally he was a noisy player, shouting all the time, cursing his foolishness when he missed a ball, and chaffing her when he placed one out of her reach. "You're off your game, young man," she cried. "Not a bit," he said. He began to slam the balls, trying to beat her, and sent one after the other into the net. She had never seen him with that set face. Was it possible that he was a little out of temper because he was not playing well? The light fell and they ceased to play. The woman whom they had passed stood in exactly the same position as when they came, and once more, with expressionless face, she watched them go. The blinds on the veranda were raised now, and on the table between their two long chairs were bottles and soda water. This was the hour at which they had the first drink of the day, and Guy mixed a couple of gin slings. The river stretched widely before them, and on the further bank the jungle was wrapped in the mystery of the approaching night. A native was silently rowing upstream, standing at the bow of the boat with 2 oars. "I played like a fool," said Guy, breaking the silence. "I'm feeling a bit under the weather." "I'm sorry. You're not going to have fever, are you?" "Oh no, I shall be all right tomorrow." Darkness closed in upon them. The frogs croaked loudly, and now and then they heard a few short notes from some singing bird of the night. Fireflies flitted across the veranda, and they made the trees that surrounded it look like Christmas trees lit with tiny candles. They sparkled softly. Doris thought she heard a little sigh. It vaguely disturbed her. Guy was always so full of gaiety. "What is it, old man?" she said gently. "Tell mother." "Nothing. Time for a drink," he answered breezily. Next day he was as cheerful as ever, and the mail came. The coasting steamer passed the mouth of the river twice a month, once on its way to the coalfields and once on its way back. On the outward journey it brought mail, which Guy sent a boat down to fetch. Its arrival was the excitement of their uneventful lives. For the first day or two they skimmed rapidly all that had come: letters, English papers, and papers from Singapore, magazines and books, leaving for the ensuing weeks a more exact perusal. Just closing the blinds, people there. Got to close the blinds. They snatched the illustrated papers from one another. If Doris had not been so absorbed, she might have noticed that there was a change in Guy. She would have found it hard to describe and harder still to explain. There was in his eyes a sort of watchfulness, and in his mouth a slight droop of anxiety. Then, perhaps a week later, one morning, when she was sitting in the shaded room studying a Malay grammar, for she was industriously learning the language, she heard a commotion in the compound. She heard the houseboy's voice. He was speaking angrily, the voice of another man, perhaps it was the water carrier's, and then a woman's, shrill and vituperative. There was a scuffle. She went to the window and opened the shutters. The water carrier had hold of a woman's arm and was dragging her along while the houseboy was pushing her from behind with both hands. Doris recognized her at once as the woman she had seen one morning loitering in the compound, and later in the day outside the tennis court. She was holding a baby against her breast. All three were shouting angrily. "Stop!" cried Doris. "What are you doing?" At the sound of her voice, the water carrier let go suddenly, and the woman, still pushed from behind, fell to the ground. There was a sudden silence, and the houseboy looked sullenly into space. The water carrier hesitated a moment and then slunk away. The woman raised herself slowly to her feet, arranged the baby on her arm, and stood impassive, staring at Doris. The boy said something to her which Doris could not have heard even if she had understood. The woman, by no change of face, showed that his words meant anything to her, but she slowly strolled away. The boy followed her to the gate of the compound. Doris called to him as he walked back, but he pretended not to hear. She was growing angry now, and she called more sharply. "Come here at once!" she cried. Suddenly, avoiding her wrathful glance, he came towards the bungalow. He came in and stood at the door. He looked at her sulkily. "What were you doing with that woman?" she asked abruptly. "Tuan say she no come here." "You mustn't treat a woman like that." "I won't have it. I shall tell the Tuan exactly what I saw." The boy did not answer. He looked away, but she felt that he was watching her through his long eyelashes. She dismissed him. "That will do." Without a word he turned and went back to the servants' quarters. She was exasperated, and she found it impossible to give her attention once more to the Malay exercises. In a little while the boy came in to lay the cloth for luncheon. On a sudden he went to the door. "What is it?" she asked. "Tuan just coming." He went out to take Guy's hat from him. His quick ears had caught the footsteps before they were audible to her. Guy did not, as usual, come up the steps immediately. He paused, and Doris at once surmised that the boy had gone down to meet him in order to tell him of the morning's incident. She shrugged her shoulders. The boy evidently wanted to get his story in first. But she was astonished when Guy came in. His face was ashy. "Guy, what on earth's the matter?" He flushed a sudden hot red. "Nothing. Why?" She was so taken aback that she let him pass into his room without a word of what she had meant to speak of at once. It took him longer than usual to have his bath and change his clothes, and luncheon was served when he came in. "Guy," she said, as they sat down, "that woman we saw the other day was here again this morning." "So I've heard," he answered. "The boys were treating her brutally. I had to stop them. You must really speak to them about it." Though the Malay understood every word she said, he made no sign that he heard. He handed her the toast. "She's been told not to come here. I gave instructions that if she showed herself again, she was to be turned out." Were they obliged to be so rough? She refused to go. I don't think they were any rougher than they could help. It was horrible to see a woman treated like that. She had a baby in her arms. Hardly a baby. It's 3 years old. How do you know? I know all about her. She hasn't the least right to come here, pestering everybody. What does she want? She wants to do exactly what she did. She wants to make a disturbance. For a little while, Doris did not speak. She was surprised at her husband's tone. He spoke tersely. He spoke as though all this were no concern of hers. She thought him a little unkind. He was nervous and irritable. I doubt if we shall be able to play tennis this afternoon, he said. It looks to me as though we are going to have a storm. The rain was falling when she awoke, and it was impossible to go out. During tea, Guy was silent and abstracted. She got her sewing and began to work. Guy sat down to read some of the English papers, as he had not yet gone through from cover to cover, but he was restless. He walked up and down the large room and then went out onto the veranda. He looked at the steady rain. What was he thinking of? Doris was vaguely uneasy. It was not till after dinner that he spoke. During the simple meal, he had exerted himself to be his usual gay self. But the exertion was apparent. The rain had ceased, and the night was starry. They sat on the veranda. In order not to attract insects, they had put out the lamp in the sitting room. At their feet with a mighty, formidable sluggishness, silent, mysterious, and fatal, flowed the river. It had the terrible deliberation and the relentlessness of destiny. Doris, I've got something to say to you, he said suddenly. His voice was very strange. Was it her fancy that he had difficulty in keeping it quite steady? She felt a little pang in her heart because he was in distress, and she put her hand gently into his. He drew it away. It's rather a long story. I'm afraid it's not a very nice one, and I find it rather difficult to tell. I'm going to ask you not to interrupt me or to say anything till I've finished. In the darkness, she could not see his face, but she felt that it was haggard. She did not answer. He spoke in a voice so low that it hardly broke the silence of the night. I was only 18 when I came out here. I came straight from school. I spent 3 months in Kuala Selor, and then I was sent to a station up the Sumbulu River. Of course, there was a resident there and his wife. I lived in the courthouse, but I used to have my meals with them and spend the evening with them. I had an awfully good time. Then the fellow who was here fell ill and had to go home. We were short of men on account of the war, and I was put in charge of this place. Of course, I was very young, but I spoke the language like a native, and they remembered my father. I was as pleased as Punch to be on my own. He was silent while he knocked the ashes out of his pipe and refilled it. When he lit a match, Doris, without looking at him, noticed that his hand was unsteady. Just seeing how much longer because the birdies need to go supervise. Right. I'd never been alone before. Of course, at home there'd been father and mother and generally an assistant. And then at school, naturally, there were always fellows about. On the way out on the boat, There were people all the time, and at KS, and the same at my first post. The people there were almost like my people. I seemed always to live in a crowd. I like people. I'm a noisy blighter. I like to have a good time. All sorts of things make me laugh, and you must have somebody to laugh with. But it was different here. Of course, it was all right in the daytime. I had my work and I could talk to the Dayaks, or Dayaks. Although they were headhunters in those days and now and then I had a bit of trouble with them, they were an awfully decent lot of fellows. I got on very well with them. Of course, I should have liked a white man to gas to, but they were better than nothing, and it was easier for me because they didn't look upon me quite as a stranger. I liked the work too. It was rather lonely in the evening to sit on the veranda and drink a gin and bitters by myself, but I could read, and the boys were about. My own boy was called Abdul. He'd known my father. When I got tired of reading, I could give him a shout and have a bit of a jaw with him. It was the nights that did for me. After dinner, the boys shut up and went away to sleep in the kampong. I was all alone. There wasn't a sound in the bungalow except now and then the croak of the chick-chuck. It used to come out of the silence suddenly so that it made me jump. Over in the kampong I heard the sound of a gong or firecrackers. They were having a good time. They weren't so far away, but I had to stay where I was. I was tired of reading. I couldn't have been more of a prisoner if I'd been in jail. Night after night, it was the same. I tried drinking 3 or 4 whiskies, but it's poor fun, drinking alone, and it didn't cheer me up. It only made me feel rather rotten next day. I tried going to bed immediately after dinner, but I couldn't sleep. I used to lie in bed getting hotter and more wide awake till I didn't know what to do with myself. By George, those nights were long. Do you know, I got so low, I was so sorry for myself that sometimes it makes me laugh now when I think of it. But I was only 19 and a half. Sometimes I used to cry. We're just going to pause there, people of Earth, because I want to put the birdies, I want to lock them down in the cage and put them to bed. Just bear with me one moment. Yes, you're a good boy. You're my good boy. It's bedtime time. I know that you know that I know that it's bedtime time. It's very busy here at Sacred Space with my feathery friends. Good boy. Listen to your tick on your little bells. Good night, little boy. You're going to sleep too. Mama's keeping you awake reading the stories to YouTube, isn't she? Well, it won't be for much longer. Here we go, my little ones. you are. Just to better get more clothes though. It's no draft. Not that there's a draft, but I don't know. I'm just a bit pedantic. I'm going to put the heater on low now. It's a bit cold. It's starting to get cold already. It's already low. There we go, little snookies. And just close the blind here. What's happened to this blind? Oh, that's what was wrong. Right, here we go. Carry on. Then one evening, after dinner, Abdul had cleared away and was just going off when he gave a little cough. He said, "Wasn't I lonely in the house all night by myself?" "Oh no, that's all right," I said. I didn't want him to know what a damned fool I was, but I expect he knew all right. He stood there without speaking, and I knew he wanted to say something to me. "What is it?" I said. "Spit it out." Then he said that if I'd like to have a girl to come and live with me, he knew one who was willing. She was a very good girl, and he could recommend her. She'd be no trouble, and it would be someone to have about the bungalow. She'd mend my things for me. I felt awfully low. It had been raining all day, and I hadn't been able to get any exercise. I knew I shouldn't sleep for hours. It wouldn't cost me very much money, he said. Her people were poor, and they'd be quite satisfied with a small present. 200 straight dollars. "You look," he said. "If you don't like her, you send her away." I asked him where she was. "She's here," he said. "I called her." He went to the door. She'd been waiting on the steps with her mother. They came in and sat down on the floor. I gave them some sweets. She was shy, of course, but cool enough. And when I said something to her, she gave me a smile. She was very young, hardly more than a child. They said she was 15. She was awfully pretty, and she had her best clothes on. We began to talk. She didn't say much, but she laughed a lot when I chaffed her. Abdul said I'd find she had plenty to say for herself when she got to know me. He told her to come and sit by me. She giggled and refused, but her mother told her to come, and I made room for her on the chair. She blushed and laughed, but she came, and then she snuggled up to me. The boy laughed too. "You see, she's taken to you already," he said. "Do you want her to stay?" he asked. "Do you want to?" I said to her. She hid her face, laughing, on my shoulder. She was very small and soft. "Very well," I said. "Let her stay." Guy leaned forward and helped himself to a whiskey and soda. May I speak now? Asked Doris. Wait a minute, I haven't finished yet. I wasn't in love with her, not even at the beginning. I only took her so as to have somebody about the bungalow. I think I should have gone mad if I hadn't, or else taken to drink. I was at the end of my tether. I was too young to be quite alone. I was never in love with anyone but you. He hesitated a moment. She lived here till I went home last year on leave. It's the woman you've seen hanging about. Yes, I guessed that. She had a baby in her arms. Is that your child? Yes, it's a little girl. Is it the only one? You saw the two small boys the other day in the campong. You mentioned them. She has 3 children then? Yes. It's quite a family you've got. She felt the sudden gesture which her remark forced from her, but she did not speak. Sorry. It does say that she did not speak. Didn't she know that you were married till you suddenly turned up here with a wife? Asked Doris. She knew I was going to be married. When? I sent her back to the village before I left here. I told her it was all over. I gave her what I'd promised. She always knew it was only a temporary arrangement. I was fed up with it. I told her I was going to marry a white woman. But you hadn't even seen me then. No, I know. But I made up my mind to marry when I was home. He chuckled in his old manner. I don't mind telling you that I was getting rather despondent about it when I met you. I fell in love with you at first sight, and then I knew it was either you or nobody. Why didn't you tell me? Don't you think it would have been only fair to give me a chance of judging for myself? It might have occurred to you that it would be rather a shock to a girl to find out that her husband had lived for 10 years with another girl and had 3 children. I couldn't expect you to understand. The circumstances out here are peculiar. It's the regular thing. 5 men out of 6 do it. I thought perhaps it would shock you, and I didn't want to lose you. You see, I was most awfully in love with you. I am now, darling. There was no reason that you should ever know. I didn't expect to come back here. One seldom goes back to the same station after home leave. When we came here, I offered her money if she'd go to some other village. First she said she would, and then she changed her mind. Why have you told me now? She's been making the most awful scenes. I don't know how she found out that you knew nothing about it. As soon as she did, she began to blackmail me. I've had to give her an awful lot of money. I gave orders that she wasn't to be allowed in the compound. This morning she made that scene just to attract your attention. She wanted to frighten me. It couldn't go on like that. I thought the only thing was to make a clean breast of it. There was a long silence as he finished. At last, he put his hand on hers. You do understand, Doris, don't you? I know I've been to blame. She did not move her hand. He felt it, cold, beneath his. Is she jealous? I dare say there were all sorts of perks when she was living here, and I don't suppose she much likes not getting them any longer. But she was never in love with me any more than I was in love with her. Native women never do really care for white men, you know. And the children? Oh, the children are all right. I've provided for them. As soon as the boys are old enough, I shall send them to school at Singapore. Do they really mean nothing to you at all? He hesitated. I want to be quite frank.